and and on one jump, if you land the wrong way, you break your leg. So he broke his leg once, and this is the end on the final jump when you get your wings. Okay, they stood up and cheered him. All of the soldiers cheered him. Because Ben Goren had told him, he said, Eretz Yisrael is, these people are Amkshe Oref Eloah. That's the language that he used. He says, they will not respect you. No one will respect you unless you earn their respect. It stayed in his head. I have to be one of them in order to earn their respect. I can't stand on the outside and tell them what to do. So he earned his parachute for wings, and he went over Ariel Sharon. Another story of that kind. He went to retrieve bodies. This was after the truce. I'm not sure it was immediately after the War of Independence or after. And he got permission to go into Jordan to get bodies that were there, Israelis, Jewish boys. But they wouldn't let him go through the front gate because he was Israeli. He was a military officer of Israel, so they couldn't let him go through the front gate. Symbolically, they couldn't handle it. So they said, go to the field that way. Oh, that's the minefield. Mines. Until today, you know how many mines there are out there? Crazy amount of mines out there, all over the place. Sinai, so he said, okay. And he said vidui, but it didn't stop him from his job to get the Jewish bodies. And he walked through the minefield, step by step, and the Jordanian soldiers are looking and saying, what is going on over here? Brings the bodies back, and when he got back, the Jordanians applauded him.
Wow.
You go back to the gate
He had to go through the minefield.
with the bodies.
What? With the bodies. He carried out many bodies.
Wow.
In the middle of the war, he went up to the north where they had 42 or so, 42 bodies. They were all jumbled up and were buried in a mass grave. He wanted to just leave them there. He said, no way. Dig them all up. He went and identified every single one and had to be Matir Ragunos, which means what they're so the courage that Eretz Yisrael, the war for Eretz Yisrael requires. So when it comes time for Yerushalayim, 6-day war, Matagur is the commander, and the defense minister is Dayan. Same thing. And Dayenu. And they say, no, we don't want to take the old city, we're afraid. We're afraid of the Arabs, they'll kill us if we take the old city. But then, for some reason, probably Ben Goren, they reversed the decision. They said, no, we're going to take the old city. And so they fought their way in through the Lion's Gate. The Dung Gate, which is the way you go out of the Kotel, was not even available. They had to come from the other side, near Sharshem, like from the top. And everybody was inching along the wall, and the Jordanians are sniping them from the top of Hayarden-The. Rabbi Goren took a shofar and a Sefer Torah, this little Sefer Torah, and he just blowing the shofar and walked straight down the middle. And they kept saying, Rabbi Goren, get him along the wall, you're going to get shot. But he held, he said, this is the way Yerushalayim has to be conquered. He had psukim, he had rayas, he had makoros. He just blew his shofar non-stop. He didn't stop blowing his shofar. He just advanced. He got in ahead of everybody. He was with one or two guys, and he found some Arab kid and said, show me where the Kotel is. He couldn't know. It was all built up with buildings. It was nothing, Show me where the Kotel is. It turns out that this was a Jew who had married an Arab and got off the derech, and the irony is this Jew who went off the derech, Rabbi Goren finds him to tell him where the Kotel is. He takes him down to the Kotel, and he's one of the first ones there, and he blows shofar, and they have the first mincha, and so on. What people don't know, that in Tisha B'Av of 1967, they said kinos on top of Hayarden. Within a week or two, Rabbi Goren had organized a Shabbos for 50,000 people to daven in Hayarden. There was nothing to talk about. Daven in Hayarden. First thing he did when he got to Hayarden is I have a heter to be here because it's war, but he got his engineers to measure the place and figure out where were the places that you're allowed to stand, according to halacha and warrant. Based on that, he planned he set up a tent for a shul, and they davened.
Did they have all those people coming?
Dayan made him cancel.
Huh?
Dayan forced him to cancel. And then he notified him a little bit later, a couple months later, weeks later, that they decided to give the Harabite back to the all Moshe Dayan.
He was also Rabbi too. That wasn't only Moshe Dayan.
Oh yeah, it was the one he wanted to deliver the orders. But in the meantime, before that happened, he had organized minyanim and davening on Harabayis and held Tisha B'Av services on Harabayis in 1967. Okay,
How many
a couple hundred people. But then the the big Shabbos that he was planning, which was going to be in Elul, by then I think it was when he said, we washed our hands of Harabayis.
Who said they washed their hands on it?
Dayan. He said, Lama lanu lavatikan hazeh.
Oh, the old Greek.
Why do we need this Vatican?
Gave up also?
He
was gonna give up, but
Yeah. So
But
now we go on to.
Rabbi and,
Yes. Okay, we're up. Hebron. Let's go to Hebron. So the day after they conquered Yerushalayim, on the 6th day, next to last day, the next day they go down to Hebron. So they were preparing to go down to Hebron. Somebody had made a makeshift flag out of a sheet. Some lady had given a sheet, and the soldiers made a degel, and they put it on top of Migdal David when they arrived back in the old city for the first time since 40. And that degel was taken down and put on a tank that arrived in Hebron. Now, Rav Goren went ahead of the troops with his driver. I don't know if you know the story. Okay, listen to this, it's unbelievable. The Goyim of Hebron already heard that Yerushalayim had fallen. But Goren was told that the army was going to go down like first thing in the morning. So he got his driver and says, I want to be at Maros Makah, I want to go. I want to be the one to blow shofar at Maros Makah. So he and his driver come in, and the entire population of Hebron is locked indoors, with white flags wrapped around every single window.
afraid.
And then he drove up towards the main square near Masmapela, and the representative of the city and of the Waqf came and gave him the keys. And he says, open up the Maros Makah. And remember, Jews were restricted to daven where? You know what Jews were allowed to daven? Only up to the 7th step. Since the Ramban in 1263 davened at the 7th step. Okay, and even during the years of the 20s, up until 48, when Jews lived in Hebron, right? Lubavitch had a headquarters, the Chida, all these places. No one went in. No Jew went in. No Jew had gone in there for 1,500 years. And the Goren describes how he and another soldier broke the lock. They forced the guy to give him the keys, whatever it was. They broke open the door, and they get in there. And he made a decision. He says, where Yitzchak is buried, he says, it looks too much like a mosque. So I don't want that to be the headquarters. I want it daven in the middle, where it doesn't look like a mosque.
It really does.
And since then, tefillos have been there since Rabbi Goren started. Now, that's not the end of the story. A little bit while later, Dayan calls him up. Oh, we gave back Maros Makah. Before that, there was a story. The mayor of the town came and kind of surrendered to Rabbi Goren. And Rabbi Goren knew that this mayor had led a victory march after the massacre of Hebron Yeshiva, of all the soldiers that killed and mutilated all the Jews. This mayor was, heading the parade. He thought he's going to be killed. He says, you're not going to kill me? He goes, no. Do I look like a person who would kill you without a trial? I'm not sure he should have killed him, but that's another story. He let him go. And so Dayan says, it's over. And somehow he fought against Dayan because he had already suffered the loss of Harabayis, and he learned his lesson, and he kept it going. And the compromise was that you could keep the davening going inside, just you got to take the flag down on the outside, not to antagonize the Arabs.
Who said that?
Dayan and Rabbi Goren. All right. So they took the flag down. So Dayan sent somebody to take the flag down. That flag that was the first one in at Migdal David and the first one in Marsa Pela. Some soldier came, took the flag down, drove to Yerushalayim, got killed in a car accident on the way. That's what we go on top reports. Kill Hashem. All right, but now let's move on from Rabbi Goren to somebody who was confused with Rabbi Goren. Also about the azus of Milchemes Eretz Yisrael. Boldness that's required. So there's a man in our community named Rabbi Chaim Kestenbaum, passed away recently. Not a lot of people knew about him. He used to have an Eish Kodesh in the front. His son is David. His son was David Morris. Done a lot of wonderful things in the community. They wrote a book about him. Kestenbaum family was a German family, very wealthy. They were big, tall, Aryan looking, big. This man was a tall man. Even in his oldest days, he was still large, big. And they all looked pretty imposing. They grew up with a maid and with a gardener in Germany, rich Jews, from rich Jews. They had a house rabbiner. They had a Rebbe that taught all the children Torah every day after public school. The kids are, when the Nazis began to take power, and they weren't in power until 32, but already in 29 and 30 they were agitated. They were they were part of the government. And the first thing that they wanted to do was to make a rule. One of the things that in the city of Leipzig, they lived in Leipzig, and Leipzig was like the main trading city of Western Europe, gateway to the east. Massively important economic center. Leipzig was always Parnassa there for Jews because you could always go get a job in the port. It was always Parnassa. They always needed workers. It was a trade going back and forth from Russia to the west and west to the east. Big. One of the biggest port cities in the world. And a lot of Jews have become wealthy there. But the Ostjuden, the Jews from Poland who were dirt poor and persecuted, they came there to scratch out a living, to get started. And although the town was dominated by Reform, there was a small but strong Orthodox community led by the family, by Rabbi Chaim's family, Kestenbaum. The grandfather was the Rav in Leipzig. And they helped out the Ostjuden, the Eastern Jews, the Nebuch, the poor Eastern Jews, and they integrated them into Kehila, and they made sure they had Parnassa. They were coming with nothing, a shirt on their back. Hitler, Yamach Shimon, the Nazis made the parliament pass a law that no foreign workers were allowed to work in the port of Leipzig. 50,000 Eastern European Jews became impoverished overnight. They had no work. So what do you do when a Jew doesn't have parnassa, doesn't have what to eat? They organized the Chesed Committee, and the German Jews of Leipzig did a massive, in the days with no lists and no computers, Germans are very organized, they created this network of chesed to feed all the families. And they were distributing the food, Except that the Nazis found out that the Kestenbaums are distributing the food. And they're keeping the Ostjuden from emigrating, you understand? Which was the first step of their... So they had a house in Holland across the border, and they kind of had to escape there. And one day the Nazis caught them, and two of the brothers, and threw them in jail. The father was the one running the whole thing. Zero Frank's father was the mastermind. He was the father of 6 or 7 boys, and he was but he knew how to bribe. He taught his children that when you're dealing with Esav, he taught them how to slip them an envelope and say, this is for your expenses. This is for your time. There's also a famous story about the Satmar Rebbe. Satmar Rebbe needed the permission of some German guy, but this German guy was so honest he would never take a bribe. So you know what he did? The Satmar put on a fur coat in the middle of August, came to this guy's office, and And the guy says, why are you wearing a fur coat? It's August. He goes, it's going to snow tonight. I have information, it's going to snow tonight. So he says, what are you, Rabbi? He says, do you want to, somebody says, do you want to make a bet, a wager? He says, I'll give you the money right now. 400, whatever it was. He gives him an envelope. Sure enough, it doesn't snow, but the guy got the money. And he let the Jews go. Brilliant, no? Here into his But anyway,
Dr. Rabbi always had a sense of humor besides everything. I said he always had a sense of humor, the Dr. Rabbi. The Dr. Rabbi.
Let me go further. So the Kesselbaums knew how to. Okay. So they got out of jail, but they said, "That's it. We've got to get out of here. We've got to get to America." And when they did get to America, they organized Hatzalah campaigns. They were one of the first ones who were saving Jews, literally by bribing Nazis. So he tells a story how his father, Ephraim's father, took him to Washington D.C. one day. And because he was very, very tall as a child, they went to Torah Yeshiva, by the way. Very tall. 13, he must have been like 6'2". He was they were very tall. So it made it look like he had a hush of a person attending to him. He got to the Swiss council or something in Washington, he starts giving him envelopes. This is for this Nazi, this is for this Nazi, this is for this Nazi, this is for you. And the guy says, the Swiss guy says, do you realize, Mr. Kesselbaum, that if you're caught, you will be put to death in America for being a spy, supporting an enemy. He goes, it's worth it for me to die to save my brethren. That's the azus of the Kedusha. Azus, conquering the fear. And they did save a lot of people. But that's not the story that I wanted to tell you. In 1970, the Yimach Shemam, the PLO, hijacked the plane. On that plane was a very famous American Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Hutner. That's exactly right. Rosh Yeshiva of Torah Das in Brooklyn, and a whole bunch of other people. Now, Mr. Kesselbaum, in the meantime, the family business was something about some chemicals that treated cement and made cement very strong and very straight, and it was cheap. His biggest customers were Arabs from the Middle East. The biggest country that hired him to build canals in Egypt. Remember the Aswan Dam project? Nasser made that his big thing, right? Nasser was showing how he was rebuilding Arab pride. The Aswan Dam was, I think, in the 60s, right? Early 60s. Guess who had the contracts to build the dams? The Kesselbaums. And he came with his dashik. You know what a dashik is? A little cap. And he would fly into Cairo, stay at the Nile Hilton. And he went all over the Middle East because his business was all over the Middle East. Anywhere there was building, his company, which was based in England, and he didn't look Jewish. He looked tall, big guy. And he just... So he was buddy with Nasser. Because when they signed the agreements to build the dam, to build millions of dollars, it was an official ceremony. So he knew tons of people there. Now he realized one thing. The negotiations were going on for about 3 weeks. Okay? And he realized it's going nowhere. Because what did they want? The terrorists wanted every single Palestinian that was in jail, everywhere in the world. And at that time they still went against terrorists, remember? Now everybody promotes terrorism. Back in those days they tried to fight terrorism. So he said, there's nobody who can do anything but me. So he gets on a plane, and he flies to Cairo, and he checks in, and he goes to Nasser's palace, and he says, I've got to see Nasser. They say, who are you? What are you? And he gives a note. He says, give this note to Nasser, and the note comes back saying, he'll see you for a few seconds. Now he had with him the papers that were signed with the official stamp of the government, the contracts to build the dam. So it had Nasser's signature on it. And his svara was, if Nasser, who's the leader of the Arab world, will tell these terrorists to back off and cut a deal and not harm the Jews, that they'll back off. Because no one would go against Nasser. That was his svara. So, sure enough, they let him in. He says, there's hundreds of uniformed people on a big red carpet, and Nasser himself comes walking down and looks at him. What is it that you want? He goes, only for seconds, I can't see you. He goes, I just need one of your people. So he goes to a general, he says, go with him, do whatever he wants. So he takes the big general, and he sends it with him. They hire a car, and they go out to the Jordanian oil. It was a little nothing airport where they held the Jews. It was called Revolutionary Airport. It was a dusty old airstrip that had been built by the British. And he had with him all of his fancy papers. So, with the general who's got all his stuff, they get in to see the terrorists. And the general translates for him, says to him, he says, I'm here as a representative of Nasser, who says he's warning you not to offer Arab hospitality to all the Jews. He brought kosher food that was not marked with Hebrew. Not marked with Hebrew, so he says, give this to them, so they can survive, they have kosher food to eat. And then he said, he wants a compromise immediately. Okay? This was Erev Yom Kippur. And he was the Baal Tefillah in England, at the Shul in England, which is guessed about, based in London. And isn't that how he's going to get back? Okay? But finally, they deliver the message. He goes to the airport, even though the airport is officially... Oh no, that's another story. I'm sorry, no one makes stories. But anyway, the next day, a compromise is reached, and at those times it was like a pretty fair deal. They gave a few terrorists, and the Jews were released, including the Hitler. But what was the point? They thought they had captured Rabbi Goren. And Rabbi Kestenbaum knew that if they think that they have Rabbi Goren, what are they going to do to him? They're going to kill him, because he's the guy, right, that was famous around the world, Time magazine, blowing the shofar, conquering Yerushalayim and Hebron. So he sent the message to all of his business contacts, you don't have Rabbi Goren. You don't have Rabbi Goren. We have a different rabbi. Oh, that Rosh Yeshiva doesn't mean anything. Rabbi Goren, that would have been a prize worth keeping. Anyway, okay, so I apologize. I have so much Torah to share with you, but sometimes in the 9 days you need to hear a story. I'll just end with this. Give me 4 minutes. Menashe all of a sudden shows up. They don't have any sheep. They didn't negotiate with not even one word with Moshe Rabbeinu. And yet Moshe gives them Gilad, which is the capital of the land of Gad and Reuben. Why? What was Menashe doing there? What was their business there? They had no business there.
They were going to have a good influence to take care of it.
So I would like to suggest the following. They're called B'nai Machir ben Menashe, same source as the Benos Cholafchad, and they wanted to show the fearlessness of how to conquer Eretz Yisrael. So the end of Bamidbar is about Chavos Yair. You know Chavos Yair? Yair.
The city that
He goes and conquers, right? A bunch of cities, because they were the lovers of Eretz Yisrael who wanted to show passion and conquer their fear. Also, this was a land of murderers.
What?
Syria is a land of murderers. Do you have to know anything more than our recent history to understand that? Which is the country that's the most violent and murderous in the world? No, isn't it? We know better than anybody.
So it goes back to those days.
So what do you see? What did we do? What was the case of murder of the supposed murder within Klal Yisrael more than anything else? Bechiras Yosef, where they dipped his blood. So the children of Yosef, who were the problems between Yosef and Reuven and the other tribes caused the first fratricide, well, they did kill him, because they threw him into the bore, which had no way of escaping alive. This was a tikkun of that. And Menashe, listen to this. One of Cheskuni says, an unbelievable thing, he says, Menashe was the one who called Binyamin back. He says, you stole the goblet. That he put terrible fear into the Jewish people that they were going to be, he needed a tikkun. So he goes and helps Reuven conquer that land. and reverse the Aveira of Sinaskina by living side by side with the very tribes that was a major clash. And also, Menashe is the only one who grew up in Egypt proper with Yosef. If you want to know how to deal, Yosef is the model. Bring them wealth, prosperity, and a few dollars for their expenses. Okay,
And I know